Sunday's the day for rest. Yes, Lord. But you know what? White supremacy does not rest. The bills don't rest. Life don't rest. So it's okay to do a little bit every day. I what's so funny is a lot of people I've had people say, "Gosh, it seems like you work so hard," and I'm like, actually, I don't really work that hard. I just use my time efficiently, right? I think that wasting time is actually worse than wasting money because I see a lot of people that might be more likely to sit around and just do a whole bunch of nothing, and nothing is cool. Sometimes it's okay to do nothing, but you can't do nothing all the time. Eventually, you're gonna get bored. You're gonna want to move forward in your life. And Regina says she likes the shirt. Thank you, thank you. It came from Macy's. I just went to the store and just grabbed some stuff and just threw it in the basket. And I was talking to my friend Bernard, who was at the All Black National Convention. Bernard's a really great guy, and he actually introduced me to Ezekiel Elliott's dad, who he grew up with. And that led to us bringing Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott played for the Dallas Cowboys for a while, and I think he might be with the Patriots now. I didn't even ask his dad, but anyway, he became we became friends because of that, right? And so I just told him, I said, man, I'm really proud of I respect you because you're a great networker and connector of people, and a very helpful human being. And I just have a lot of respect for people that are just good people. He's a good guy. But anyway, one thing I want to mention too is Chanel's in the chat. And as you guys know, we're going to start COIN, our stock options certification class, which starts on Thursday. So if you want to get certified in the area of stock options, she's got a discount code you can use that is exclusive for people that are in the Money in the Morning class. Everything that you get from the class, all the materials, all the slides, everything is yours for life. And it's a small group setting, deliberately small, so you can get that individual attention that you might need and be able to talk to me directly about what it is you're trying to do. I think stock options are the most important, one of, not maybe not the, but probably top two or three in terms of areas of finance that you may want to get exposure to because it allows you to make investments at amounts that are more affordable and to just do things like generate consistent income and stuff like that. That's really a fun way to make money. All right. So anyway, the URL should be in the chat, and you can talk to Chanel if you have any questions. She's right there in the chat with you, as well as any other issues you might have with the Black Business School, anything that's going on. Just let us know how we can support you, and we'd be happy to help. All right. So one thing I wanted to start with was first off, I want to bring in some things regarding the stock market right now. The stock market is pretty much doing really well right now. And one of the things I want to warn you about is that all good things come to an end. And one of the things that I saw recently was a lot of analysis basically saying that the stock market it just looks like it's just ready to crash. It just looks like it's ready to fall apart. The valuations are insanely high right now, and a lot of experts are deeply concerned. And the hard part about it is, as much as you might say, "Oh no, Dr. Boyce said the market's going to crash. I gotta sell all my stock right now." The hardest thing about these market crashes is that it's really unpredictable in terms of when it's going to happen. You might know that it's going to happen, but you don't know when. And the problem is that whenever someone says, "Aha, we know that the market's going to crash, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to sell my stock, and then I'm going to buy a bunch of put options, and I'm going to do this and do that," you might be 2, 3 years off of the date. You might actually, think it's going to crash in 2025, and then you might be right, but you may not be right until 2028, right? So, so you have 3 years where you literally sat there and missed out on all that money that was being made for 3 straight years because you're trying to protect your investments and everything else and trying to be right. So one thing I want to tell you is that based on the stock market and the research and what everything that's out there in terms of how these things work, you really just can't predict it. I mean, as much as I wish I could just say, okay, here's what everybody needs to do right now. There are a couple things we can talk about, but I can't really just say like, okay, just sell your stock right now because it's going to go bad. Um, but what I can say are there are a few things that you can do to protect the portfolio from a downturn. Like so, for example, put options are something that you can buy to protect against a downturn. You can do stop loss orders, things like that. I did a whole training called Stormproof Investing. If you want to go take a look, I think the URL is stormproofinvesting.com. I'm gonna type it in the chat. Let's to make or type it up here and see if it's still if the URL is there. Let me see. Stormproofinvesting.com. So it's about a 90-minute breakdown I did of 7 different ways to protect your portfolio if you're afraid of a downturn. But the biggest thing I really want to lay out for you is I just want you to really don't spend your whole life being scared of crashes. That's a trauma response. That's one thing that they trained us to do is to be scared all the time. And the thing about being an investor is that you can have some degree of rational fear. But if you live in fear, it's very, very hard to be wealthy if you are constantly scared of the bad things that'll happen. You're going to miss out on everything. Like people who are afraid afraid to get hurt in relationships and they never go on a date for 20 years. Like you're missing out on so much. And so the best way to deal with fear isn't to pretend like it's not there. It's also not to avoid any possible negative outcome. It's to learn how to process things so that it doesn't become trauma in you, right? When something goes wrong, you process it. You say, okay, what did I learn? All right, well, you win some, you lose some. That's the way it goes. And then you just keep on going. Like, don't let the world just scare you into sitting still. In fact, give me a yes in the chat. Everybody give me a yes if you know somebody in your family who refuses to touch the stock market because they just believe it's going to crash. Anybody heard that? Like, oh, don't do investing. Investing's gambling. I think I saw somebody say they said that about investing, and then I saw somebody say that about stock options. They said stock options is nothing more than gambling. And I said, well, I mean, it can't be if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. That's like somebody saying fire is bad because all fire does is burn you alive. I mean, it could. Fire can definitely burn you. Yeah. I mean, it can burn your house down. Put poor people in California. That fire, you don't play with fire. Don't play with fire. But would you want to live in a world? Let me ask you this. Would you want to live in a world with no fire? Would you want to, if they said, well, we're gonna ban fire because fire hurts people, and we don't want to hurt anyone. So fire is banned. Anyone seen using fire for any purposes at all, it's going to go to jail. You're going to get 30 years in jail because you're using fire. Fire is bad. How crazy would that sound? How ridiculous would that be? Well, that's what happens when people say, well, that's why I don't invest. Uh, no, no, don't say that, please, because that means you need to learn a little bit more about investing. Investing doesn't have to be dangerous. But unfortunately, you live in an economy where inflation is never going to go away and your boss is never going to give you a raise that keeps you up with inflation. So investing is necessary. It sucks to say it. I wish I could tell you that. Yeah, you could just keep saving your money and keep on working your job and you'll be fine. It just doesn't work that way. Also I hear like for example Dave Ramsey's people. I like Dave Ramsey's people, but I've heard a lot them talk about being debt free. Like being debt free is the number one goal of every human being on the planet. Debt free, debt free, debt free, debt free, debt free, debt free, debt free. Not all the time. Debt is actually an amazing thing to have access to if you know how to use it right. The reason that I suspect that they promote a debt-free lifestyle is because they have so many people who use debt in the wrong way. Right? So again, it's like fire. If everybody uses fire to burn themselves alive, then you might be tempted to say, okay, no more fire up in here. Y'all, this is just bad. Right? So with debt, consumer debt typically becomes a financial liability. It's like putting on weight on your body and all you're getting is fat. So consumer debt, credit card debt, a lot of auto loan debt. Auto loan debt is terrible. That's why I think about this. Isn't it crazy how they'll loan you all kinds of money to go buy you a raggedy ass car, but won't loan you any money to start that business? Or they'll loan you a $500,000 to go to school at some overpriced university, but won't give you $25,000 to get your business off the ground. I think that's really fascinating. And I think that it comes down to the fact that they're happy to give you the bad debt, but not so quick to give you the good debt. The bad debt is like it's like putting weight on your body. And there's like if I'm a boxer and they say you need to put more weight on and go to a different weight class, they're not saying they want me to go eat a bunch of Twinkies and donuts and ice cream and get fat. They're not saying that, are they? No, they're saying put some muscle on your body and the muscle will make you more effective. If I said, well, no, I'm just gonna go get fat, and then I can I can gain an extra 10 pounds in a week, in a couple weeks. It'd be easy. Where's the ice cream at? Well, my trainer would probably say, no, boys, that's not how you gain weight. You want to gain it efficiently. There's efficient weight gain and inefficient weight gain. There's good weight and there's bad weight. So the same thing is true when it comes to finances. There is efficient debt and there's inefficient debt or risk. I talked all yesterday, all day about risk. I said there's efficient risk and inefficient risk. And so what you're looking for are efficient ways to add on to make the machine stronger and better. So if I'm a boxer and my coach says gain weight, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to gain 10 pounds of muscle, and it's going to make me a more effective fighter. So same thing is true when it comes to debt. Debt is a weight for sure, but if you use it efficiently, that weight will allow you to accomplish more than you could otherwise. In fact, I dare say that every single person in this room, if I could find a way to give you the ability to go borrow $1 million right now, take on $1 million in debt right now, I could literally help every single person in this room quit your job. Every single one of you could quit your job tomorrow if you could borrow $1 million right now, because I could tell you exactly what to do with that $1 million. I'd say, okay, let's go and buy some shares of, I don't know, Nvidia and whatever, and we're going to sell stock options, and every single person in this room would make over $100,000 a year in income. And it wouldn't be a highly risky maneuver. It would be very simple, very straightforward. So access to capital is a good thing. If you get a chance to borrow money and the interest rate's not terrible, I believe jumping on it is okay. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying that's what I do. I mean, I think access to capital is good. Um, Also, yesterday we were talking about risk, and there was a lady who said something that was really kind of wild. She said she was on Kendra G's show. Kendra G does relationship stuff, and she said that she said she has three baby daddies and all of them gangbang. And she said that she doesn't like men. She said, I don't want to date a man with a job. And it was kind of the craziest thing. Like, you don't want a man with a job? That's wild. And so I said, what's a more optimistic way to interpret this, other than just condemning what she said? Because it just sounded, it was the wildest thing I'd heard in a while. And I said, oh, I get it. What she's really saying is that, so I looked up some stuff on evolutionary biology in terms of what women are attracted to. And one thing that's consistent is that women are attracted to risk taking. Men who take risks, a man taking chances shows confidence, and it also increases the likelihood that he's going to have some success and be able to provide resources because he's not playing the safe. That's why when men, especially in adolescence, boys will do risky things to impress girls, and girls will be impressed because you're the captain of the football team, or you rode your motorcycle across a bridge, or, with I don't you did something crazy, right? Going 100 miles an hour, right? So and elephants do this, like other mammals do this too, and the females are like, oh my gosh, he's so sexy, whatever. And so I said, in my view, if you really wanted to kind of interpret what she's saying without necessarily being judgmental, um, you could say what she's really saying in her own way is, I kind of want a man that's a boss. I want a man that's like a leader. I want a man that controls his own space. I don't want a man who's kind of bowing to some greater authority or just sort of weak and scared to take chances. And obviously it's misguided, right? Because I mean, I don't think it's necessarily advisable to, pick multiple baby daddies who are all like gangbanging, because that puts you in prison or you end up dying. But I said, I wonder if she'd also be attracted to a man who was just like a multimillionaire because he took chances as an entrepreneur, or he made investments. He didn't play it safe. Like Jeff Bezos from Amazon. He had a really good job, And he quit his job. He was making hundreds of thousands a year, and he quit his really good job because he wanted to start his own business. And that was really risky. People told him it was a bad idea, but he did it anyway. And I think that kind of courage is admirable, right? And so ultimately, what that conversation got down to, this lady's attraction to the men who take chances and risks, is I said, oh, that's a risk conversation. There's inefficient risk and efficient risk. I said, so if you are a risk taker who decides you want to become a gangbanger and rob a bank and do whatever, kill people for money, you're a risk taker, which can be appealing to some people who don't know better. But the problem is obviously that's not an efficient risk because you can end up dead or in prison. And so there's other types of risks you can take that are more efficient, like I'm not going to play it safe. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go and start a business. Or I'm not going to do what everybody else in my family is doing. I'm going to become an investor. Or I'm going to just try something different so I don't get the same thing everybody else gets. And I think that that's something to pay attention to because the universe has a way of balancing things in a specific way that links to investing. There's a universal relationship between risk and reward. And you've known this your whole life. You've heard it said like this. Anybody ever heard people say, "Scared money don't make money"? Anybody ever heard that? Anybody ever heard somebody say, "Nothing ventured, nothing gained"? Right? You've heard that, right? And what they're talking about is that there's a universal relationship between risk and reward. And so what is really unfortunate about that is when I heard this young lady say, "I like gangbangers" or "I like street dudes," whatever. I said what she really likes is she likes the fact that a street dude is operating on his own rules. And that's appealing to her. And actually, if you look at evolutionary biology, you'll find that all of that makes perfect sense. Now, it has a dark side to it, though, not just from the risk of being the street dude, but also I even read something where they said that unfortunately, sometimes high risk takers can have Machiavellian traits like narcissism or what's the other word? Psychopaths. They can be So when you are kind of like chasing the bad boy, right? You know how young girls love the bad boy? The problem with the bad boy is that the bad boy sometimes can be someone that really doesn't have your best interest at heart. And they said, and when I was reading, it said that bad boys can be really good for short-term mating opportunities, but they're not very good for long-term relationships. So that's why you have the whole conversation online where there are a lot of regular guys who are mad because they see women that will get pregnant by the bad boy and then get to their 30s and say, I'm looking for another kind of guy to help take care of my kids. And that becomes kind of a source of resentment or whatever, right? But ultimately, I'll say this. Here's another conclusion I came to, is I said, this is a reflection of a deep injustice that's done to the Black community that we allow. We allow the injustice. Right, we allow other people to do things to us. It's not just them doing it, and we can't do anything about it. I think that people can't do stuff to you if you don't allow it. And one thing that they do to us is they basically take a lot of our most ambitious young men and our most capable young men, and they ruin them through the public school system and through media. And so the way I broke it down was I said, some of the smartest, most ambitious, most capable men in the Black community, hundreds of thousands of them are in prison right now. Hundreds of thousands of the most ambitious, greatest leaders that you've ever seen in history in this community are in the morgue right now. There's Malcolm X's that are dead now. There are Martin Luther Kings that are incarcerated right now. And what occurs is, I can link it to the public school system. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that Black people should be educating Black children. That's my dream. I believe Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black-owned businesses. This is what we call in the Black business school, we call this the Black core of three. And the reason I believe that is because if you think about what happens in the public school system, when you have a little Black boy who is a risk taker, who wants to succeed, who wants to be a leader, who doesn't want to go work at Burger King, he doesn't want to be a white man's flunky, he doesn't want to go and fit into a corporate job. Well, in the public school system, he instantly gets marginalized. He instantly gets labeled. He instantly gets in trouble, put into detention. I put myself in that category. I did not want to do regular things. I wanted to accomplish things. I wanted to succeed. And I was in detention so much, I thought I lived there. I didn't, I got diagnosed. They wanted me to get on the medication, special ed, all these things. And it was basically because I had this freaking teacher, a bunch of them. I'm not talking about one person. I'm talking about like a collection of these white women from the suburbs who didn't understand a damn thing about who I was and what I cared about. They didn't understand me, so they punished me for not fitting into whatever their paradigm was for how a little boy is supposed to act. And I said, look, I can't, I don't know how to be a little white girl. Like that's what they do. They train you to become a little white girl. And when you don't fit that, then they end up punishing you. And so I said, if I was a kid and I was in school again, I wish I could have had like a really loving, a bunch of really loving black teachers, like a black woman that understood me, that could give me love every day, and a black man who could give me guidance and mentorship, who could say, okay, boys, calm down. All right, so here's what let's go play some football for a while, and then we're gonna do our math, right? You know what I mean? Just stuff like that we naturally do with kids. And I would have been a whole different kid. Not only would I have performed well in school, I would have excelled in school. I would have tried to go to college at the age of 12 or 13. That's how ambitious, that's how excited I would get when I found out I was good at something. And what happens with a lot of boys is they get marginalized from school, so they find other things they can excel at, which typically ends up being sports or street stuff. Right? Either I'm gonna be an expert rapper thug, or I'm gonna be an expert basketball, football player, and that's really it. Right? And then the other ones that don't have any of those things just end up just kind of just falling off to the wayside, and you don't have the ability as a community to have, $1 trillion worth of human capital, meaning human beings that are valuable. You can't have $1 trillion worth of human capital thrown in the garbage every generation. Every time they take a motivated black boy and turn him into a thug nigga, they're stealing millions of dollars from the black community. Every time they take a kid that could have been Einstein, but they made him dedicate his life to serve in the NFL so he can get a lifetime of brain damage, they're harming the community, because most of those boys that dedicate their lives to football never make a nickel playing football. Think about this. You done invested millions of dollars worth of hours and labor into a certain skill, and there is no job for you after you have made that investment. It takes a really long time to do 12 years of Pee Wee League and high school football, and to really be a serious athlete. And it's a temptation because we're such good athletes that we really think I've got that chance to go to the NFL, because they don't have an awareness of the whole distribution. They don't see how many other great athletes there are who are also all city, who also won the state championship. They don't see that. They don't know that until they're about 35 and they're reflecting on the statistics. But when they're young, they really think, okay, I'm the best basketball player in Houston, so of course I'm going to the NBA. Yeah, Houston's a big city, and it was a lot of work for you to be the best basketball player in Houston, but nobody cares about that. That ain't gonna, those guys in the NBA are freakishly talented, freakishly large. They won the genetic lottery. Just to be 6'8" it is like less than 1% of the population. So just being tall enough to be in the NBA is extremely rare, let alone being tall and talented enough. We got one that's 6'9" in our house, and that poor boy couldn't, he don't know a basketball hoop from a bowl of chili, but but still, so I would just say overall, they steal from us. And they don't just steal our wealth and our money, they steal our human beings. They steal people from us. And so when I saw this lady's video and I saw her say, I only like street dudes, um I don't like 9 to 5 guys or guys that have jobs. I saw that. I said, okay, like I said, when you do the research, and you see it from a different perspective, you actually realize that that's kind of evolutionary. That we position a lot of our black men to in a spot where they say either you got to be a subordinate, you got to be the beta to the white man's alpha, you got to be a loser, or you have to be marginalized. You have to go to jail or die or something, and that's not fair. That's one of the reasons why I believe every black male in America should learn how to start a business, so that he just has a choice. I think when he has options, some of your sons and your daughters too, if you give them the choice of rising economically and setting their own destiny, they're going to do it. And they're going to do it really well. They're going to be very successful. The best and brightest, baddest women and men I know, that are really excelling at the highest levels, they don't have any fear of we everybody thinks like the street guys are like the tough guys. I've never had a fear of street guys. And my father's murdered people before. Not murdered, but killed them. He went to Vietnam, right? So I don't have a fear of people that think that way. I just think it's illogical. I think that it's going to get you killed. I think it's going to put you in jail. It's going to put you in bad situations. But I learned that from talking to older men who warned me about that before. But when guys get older, they start reflecting. And I kid you not, I saw Too Short doing an interview with my really good friend Willie D. I've never met Too Short, but I know Willie really well. He was in my wedding, and they had the best conversation. And what I loved about the conversation is they said, we grew up thinking that the street guys, that being in the street was the best way to be, that was where it was. He said, no, that's not where it is. He said, and Willie was courageous enough, and I have so much respect for him for saying it, as he said the squares had it figured out all along. And I was kind of laughing. I said, yeah, because I'm kind of a square. I want to be a square. I keep my square nice and tight because I don't want to be out here doing stupid stuff just because I'm trying to fulfill a stereotype that was never of interest to me. And that's how we became such good friends, because there's mutual respect. I respect you for being the genius behind the Ghetto Boys, one of the greatest hip hop groups in all of history. And you respect me for being gangster enough to go out and fight hard to get a PhD in finance and to fight for my community. That's what we need. Right. And what we had for so long, and this is where they destroyed the culture. We didn't do this. They did this through commercialized hip hop, and it made me angry. They destroyed trillions of dollars in black wealth because they started mainly, actually in the 70s, with promoting pimp culture in Hollywood. And y'all know who runs Hollywood. And then the pimp culture led into this nonsense in the 90s where everybody was literally, people were going to prison and bragging about the fact that they went to prison. Well, you ain't really been, you ain't black, you didn't even go to jail. How many times you been to jail? Like people would brag about who went to jail the longest, and like I don't snitch on nobody, and I just, and I'm a G, and that is the G code and all that. And what I love about the real tough men in our society, people like D1, who I spoke to him yesterday. D1 is speaking on this. If you're interested in this type of stuff, right now there's a whole conversation in Atlanta about a rapper named Young Thug, and it's all about whether or not he was a snitch or not. And D1 is right in the middle of the conversation saying, like, why are we so committed to proving some G code instead of, like, in his words, he said the God code. He said, why aren't you equally passionate about defending your community? Why are you not equally passionate about standing up for black children? Why are you not equally passionate about building black wealth? Why are you not equally passionate about education? Why are you not equally passionate about black success? That's where the passion should be. The passion should not be built around defending a highly degenerate culture that has led to the destruction of millions of our people and destroyed massive amounts of wealth. When they took degenerates and broken people and made them into heroes in the community, they stole your money. They stole your wealth because now every person that could be building a billion-dollar company or a $1 million company that's employing black people is now instead running the streets trying to act like a damn teenager. And some of these guys are embarrassing. Some of them are like 50 years old. And it's crazy. It's weird. Right. So really what I really like about our community, particularly when it comes to things like wealth, is that we're kind of just maturing and finding ourselves, right? Finding ourselves. And finding yourself, in my view, means little things like just knowing the difference between things that are healthy and unhealthy, knowing things that will build wealth versus things that would destroy wealth, and just kind of at least making sure you're making a conscious choice when you do that. And also when you talk about the economics, number one, everybody should be an investor. I really think every single person that considers themselves to be black should be a wealth builder. Like literally being like wealthy is the new black. Investing is the new black, right? Financial security is the new black. And when you make that part of the culture, then you're going to have people literally competing on how financially secure they can be, how well they can set up their kids, how well they can set up their estate plan, how well they can set up their businesses, how well they can go out here and make things happen. And then at that point, what happens is that you become truly competitive with other people because right now, the false perception is that black people simply cannot compete in anything that's relevant. The false perception is that black people are broken and weak and pathetic and can't do anything for themselves. The false perception is that we can't do anything on our own without white people. Even your scholars sometimes think this way. The Hannah Nicole Jones and another guy that I really like, I forgot his, William Doherty did this really strange interview where they were basically trying to prove that we can't fix the racial wealth gap. And so she asked them these questions. She said, "So does marriage close the racial wealth gap?" And he explained accurately that no, being married doesn't, it helps with wealth, but it doesn't close the gap. And he says, then she says, something, I can't remember all the questions she asked, but like, does saving money close the racial wealth gap? And he explained the answer is no, because he's right. He's right about that. And then what I found really interesting about this interview was that there wasn't a conclusion. Like there wasn't like a, okay, well, what is going to close the racial wealth gap? And I think that's where you get in trouble is when you get to the point where you discuss a problem ad nauseum, but you don't actually find a solution. Let me see if I can find it. His name's Sandy Doherty. I like him a lot, by the way. He wrote a great book on reparations, and he's super smart. And let me see if I can find this freaking thing because I really thought this interview was like, holy crap, this is so wild that there's no resolution here. I gotta find it later. I thought I could find it real quick on YouTube. But I was like, okay, so what's the solution? What we gonna do? How we gonna get off the plantation? And what the conclusion ends up becoming is it becomes something like we gotta make politicians have to do this for us. And I'm like, that's very depressing because they don't do nothing for us. Like they ain't done shit for us ever. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's so depressing. And so I think it's time. I don't know if y'all agree with me, if you go with me, because I know I'm talking. I'm literally God is guiding the conversation now. Boyce ain't got nothing to do with it. But I'm just tired of being depressed all the time about being black. I don't think being black is a source of depression. I think that being black should be a source of excitement. I think that being black should be a source of pride. I think being black should be a source of opportunity. I think being black should be a source of positivity, prosperity, and possibility, right? I think that we should literally say and wake up every day and say, thank God I'm a black man. Thank God I'm a black woman. Thank God I'm in the black community. Thank God I've got this opportunity. That I don't want to sit around and hear how bad it is to be black all the time. I do certainly want to acknowledge the issues. I don't want to run away from any of that. But I really want us to say, thank God I'm allowed to go invest in the stock market and build some wealth so I don't have to wait on my boss. Thank God I can go learn about real estate so I can actually own some land and take pride in owning property. Thank God I can sit with my family and form a business that will allow us to all eat and do well and love each other and take care of each other, right? Thank God I can go to the gym and work out and eat right and be healthy and happy and love another person, right? There's so much out here in life that's so good that I think sometimes they get us really drilled in on the misery of being black. And then when you say, well, what's the answer to the misery? How do I really get out of that? A couple things happen. Number one, I don't know if we're ever really honest enough or brave enough to really say who's causing some of that misery, right? Like we don't really talk about white people that much. We're afraid. Like when I would just say the white man, people would get like, oh, you can't say like it become a slave talk. They start whispering. You can't talk about the white man, cause he gonna come get you. Right? It becomes like that plantation stuff, like if we hiding in the barn and we both shivering and got sweat coming down our bodies and stuff, right? Like sitting next to the hay and the horses, like that's the one thing, right? We don't really talk honestly about the fact that black people don't have any friends. And a lot of people that claim to be our friends just really aren't. But then the other thing that happens is there's rarely a solution that simply involves Black empowerment, that really involves empowerment, which is connected to discipline, sacrifice, and accountability. To be empowered, you have to be disciplined enough to say, I'm willing to sacrifice to solve this problem. And I'm also going to hold myself accountable for my role in perpetuating the issue. Right. So if all you do is you come to me and you say, things are bad for Black people and it's because of Trump, I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to sit here and defend Trump and say, oh, yeah, no, no, Trump's a good guy. No, I would just say, well, that's everything, right? That's what you got for me. So where are we going with this? Where's this taking me? Well, that's why we got to show up and we got to vote for the Democrats so that we can get Trump out of office. I'm like, yeah, but Nothing's going to change because of that. So I would encourage you when you're solving problems, ask yourself, like, what is the goal? Work backward from the solution. In mathematics, they call that dynamic optimization. You've heard me talk about it. Dynamic optimization means if I want to solve a problem, I don't just flail my arms in the air and just do a bunch of arm waving and get all emotional and riled up and think somehow that's going to guide me to a solution. No, I got to look at the destination and then work my way backward. Or if I'm trying to get somewhere physically, I don't just start running in a random direction and then assume that because I ran hard that day that I'm getting closer to the final goal. No, that's not the right way to think about it. I got to look on my GPS, have it tell me what direction to go, and then I go in that direction. I don't think we do that when it comes to solving problems like the racial wealth gap, for example. If your goal is to see Black people wealthy and in a good spot, then you start at this at the end and say, okay, what's the objective? Well, my goal isn't really so much to close the racial wealth gap per se, because I don't think that I don't think comparing ourselves to white people is necessarily the healthiest move. We've talked about that from a financial psychology standpoint. It is not healthy for you to spend your whole life constantly comparing yourself to another person. It doesn't it's not good for you. You're not accounting for the fact that they have benefits you didn't have. They have resources and opportunities you don't have. They have connections you don't have. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Seriously, it'll drive it. All it'll do is drive you crazy. It'll get you operating on a low vibrational frequency because you'll become petty and jealous and obsessive about competing to the point where you'll falsely believe that if I win this competition that I've really succeeded. Well, no, you probably haven't succeeded at the highest level that you could possibly go because you're using them as a false benchmark. And then two, there's nothing magical about this comparison point. It's just something that sticks out in your head and it makes you feel better. But just because you feel better doesn't mean it's actually better for you. So instead of comparing ourselves to white people, because there's nothing magical about them, I say we compare ourselves to the best, to what we want to be, to where we want to be. And so when I think about the goal, when I think about the goal of Black wealth, the goal to me is not just we're going to close the racial wealth gap, or we're going to have the same amount of money as white people. I don't care about that. I care about you. So my goal is I don't want to see Black kids out here hurting and suffering and stressed out because they don't have financial security. I want that to be exist for our kids. I don't want our children to have to work for white people unless they want to. I want every Black family to feel free and healthy and able to mentally healthy and not stressed out from the microaggressions that come from work and economic anxiety. That's what I want. And I start there in terms of how I want us to feel. I visualize a world where we are self-determined. I visualize a world where we are able to be proud. I visualize a world where we can love each other, build each other, support each other, and ain't got to ask nobody's damn permission to get it done. That's the world I see. And I know money can help us get there. So backing up from the final goal, then it's like, okay, let's invest consistently. Let's do it together. Get on this boat to financial freedom, whatever you want to call it, right? This boat to this other life where money is then a productive tool to help us achieve goals, not a subject of extreme anxiety and stress and fear. And let's go there together. And when we arrive, then that means that we'll have a whole different universe of possibilities in terms of things that we can do. We can sit down together and talk about investing in things together to create what we want for our kids and our grandkids, as opposed to sitting around believing that white people decide what we can do for our children. I think that that's degrading, it's insulting, it's pathetic, and it's sad. But I get it. We were slaves for a long time, so we're growing out of that. That's my belief on this, and I'm sticking to it. And so let me be more specific about a couple of things. Before we go, one thing, oh, by the way, the convention next year in Brooklyn, the tickets will be on sale for about another week or so. I know that there was a date on the site. That date was like wrong. It's going to be like I think mid-September is when the early bird will end. So if you want to go to allblacknationalconvention.com, you can lock in your tickets for next year. Allblacknationalconvention.com. Second of all, if you are interested in the 5-year pledge and you want to do the 5-year pledge, which we talked about, which is, pick an amount that's equal to one of your bills, invest it consistently for yourself in the S&P 500. I will guide you to a position where in 5 years, It doesn't happen overnight. In 5 years, you'll feel much more financially secure than you are now, but it takes time. So if you want to learn more about it, go to 5yearpledge.com and just take the pledge, and I'll send you resources that'll help you get there. That URL is right above my head. And then lastly, Chanel is sharing a link for our stock options class. So if you want to learn stock options from me in a small group setting, then just take a look at that link and feel free to join us for class. Okay, so the last point I want to make really quickly is this week in the stock market. Let's see a couple of things that are going on in case you're interested. One, Trump, the Supreme Court just ruled that Trump's tariffs are not valid, which is not Supreme Court. I'm sorry, the appeals court. So which means he's probably going to take it to the Supreme Court. The tariffs were a big part of his policy agenda, and and that's really gonna, I assume, is gonna rock the stock market on Tuesday, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll just wait and see what it looks like. Also, just know that there, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of evidence to say the market is overvalued right now. That's going to be that's a thing. So what happens is that when the market gets overvalued, it's like you have these little things called catalysts. Catalysts can push the market up or push it down. So you got a really fragile market. So if some bad news pops in somewhere, particularly around AI is where they think that there's what you call a bubble, that they're over investing in AI. If any indicator comes that the AI bubble is a little bit too big and it gets popped, then you could see, some pretty steep declines in stock market prices. So just be prepared for that. Hold steady, be consistent, and if you're consistently investing, you'll still be wealthy in a few years, but you may have some rough spots in the middle. One thing that made me really excited though is cannabis finally took off. I got to go look and see exactly what happened, but I had this cannabis ETF called YOLO, YOLO, and I've been buying it for years. And if you know anything about it, it was dropping, dropping, dropping. And so I just maintain my thesis that at some point cannabis is going to become legal, and then all these prices were going to go up. So I just kept buying and buying and buying. So when it was at 15, I was buying. When it was at 12, I was buying. When it went to 9, I was buying. When it went to 7, I was buying. And then it went all the way down to 3 or 2 or something, right? So I just kept buying. And even when it got down to 2, I was like, well, I guess I'll just buy more shares because it was a long-term investment. It was a long-term asset that I wanted to own. And then out of the blue, I don't know exactly what happened with it. I got to look it up, but something changed, and that sucker went up 70% in 1 month. And now my total return was not 70% because remember I had these overpriced shares I bought for 14, 15, and 16. But I think I made like a 30% ROI on my long-term investment because of the dollar cost averaging. Ricardo knows what that is. I see that. I see you, Ricardo. And that was kind of cool. That was very cool. Okay, so George B says he's been investing in YOLO too. Good, good. Yeah, I think I just cannot imagine them not ever legalizing weed. And I think that what they're doing with crypto, by kind of putting crypto in the banking system in the way that they're doing it, it seems like a natural extension that they're going to start just letting everybody into the banking system. Like one of the biggest challenges in the cannabis industry is, from what I understand, I'm not an expert on this, is that they have trouble accessing like federal banking possibilities, if you will, right? Meaning, like, there's all these like stupid laws about like transferring money interstate or whatever, and they have to. They're using all this cash. Like, I went to visit a cannabis place out in Arizona or somewhere, and they had this big vault full of money because they couldn't put it in the bank. And I said, man, y'all gotta run like y'all really have to move like drug dealers. That's crazy. So that's not sustainable. That's not going to last for long. And I think that the crypto shift is going to impact cannabis. I think it's all going to kind of help in a multitude of ways. Another thing too is I see a lot of evidence that Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to keep on going up. Bitcoin because it's a great store of value with limited supply, and most indicators say Bitcoin is going to keep going up. Tom Lee from Fundstrat predicts that Bitcoin is going to be worth 1.2 million in a few years. I don't know if that's true. He's really optimistic though, so be careful. But there's a lot of evidence to say that's going to happen. It may crash between now and then, but he predicts 1.2 million in a few years. And then also Ethereum is not just a store of value, but a store of information. And from what I'm gathering, they're planning to build a lot of the Wall Street infrastructure on top of the Ethereum network, which is going to be like, holy crap. If they do that, if they do even a fraction of what they say they're going to do, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be really wild for Ethereum. And in fact, the other thing too about Bitcoin and Ethereum and the adoption of Bitcoin and Ethereum by institutional investors, there's still only a small percentage of institutional investors that have really touched those assets. And the Trump administration is really incentivizing the participation of Bitcoin and Ethereum into the broader economy, meaning, they want them to have access to the money from pension funds and stuff like that. So as that occurs, that should naturally push up the prices of those assets. So that's just a thought that was on my mind today. Not investing advice ever. You guys know I do not give investing advice ever, ever, ever. But if you want to know where I'm putting my money, there you go. That's my 2 cents. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. In case you don't know, my book is called The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power. If you want a copy, you can go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. And also, if you're not on the text list for this class, just text the word morning to the phone number 87948. So text morning to 87948. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Y'all like my picture of Dr. Claude Anderson I put in the back? It's kind of cool, right? It's amazing what you can do with AI, right? I love this guy. That's my man. I'm gonna call him today. All right. All right. So you guys have a great day. Love you. Love you. Love you. See you soon.